Why do we suffer? Is it the job, the relationship, or the bank account? What if the stress you feel isn't coming from the world around you, but from the story you tell yourself about it? Imagine a boat hitting yours in the fog. You feel instant rage. But then you see the boat is empty. Where did the anger go? It vanished because the story changed. What if you could stop the heavy grinding of your mind and just let the mud settle? What happens when you stop thinking and start truly living? This audiobook summary of Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen explores the root cause of psychological suffering. It argues that we do not experience reality directly, but rather through our thinking. By distinguishing between effortless thoughts, which are divine insights, and manual thinking, which creates anxiety, we can uncover a natural state of peace. The text explains how to stop stirring the muddy waters of the mind, allowing clarity to return automatically. Through metaphors like the empty boat and practical advice on environmental design, it guides listeners toward living in a state of flow, intuition, and unconditional creation. Ready to go deeper? Here's the extended summary of Don't Believe Everything You Think. True personal transformation is not about forcing change or acquiring new strategies. It is about waking up to how the human experience is actually created. Once you see this mechanism clearly, change becomes inevitable. We often chase external goals, better relationships, higher income, or business growth, believing these achievements will finally bring us peace and satisfaction. However, these external results are merely byproducts. The real objective is to uncover an inside-out understanding of life, reconnecting with a natural state of unconditional love, joy, and peace. As you engage with these ideas, it is important to listen for insight rather than just intellectual information. True wisdom is not found in the words themselves, which only point toward the truth. Instead, wisdom is experienced as a feeling, a sense of coming home to a quiet, resilient clarity that already exists within you. Truth is inherently simple. If things start to feel complicated, it is a sign that the mind has drifted away from what is true. To understand why we struggle, we must distinguish between unavoidable pain and optional suffering. Consider the Buddhist teaching of the two arrows. The first arrow represents the painful events of life, which are inevitable. The second arrow is our reaction to those events, the resistance, the analysis, and the commentary. This second arrow is where psychological suffering lives, and unlike the first, it is entirely optional. We tend to believe that our feelings are caused by external circumstances, but this is an illusion. We do not live in an objective reality. We live in a world of thought. The meaning we assign to an event determines how we feel about it, not the event itself. This is why two people can have the exact same job, yet one feels miserable while the other feels grateful. It is also why you can feel the stress of a job, even when you are sitting safely in your living room. The job isn't doing it to you. Your thinking is. This principle is beautifully illustrated by the Zen story of the empty boat. Imagine a monk meditating in a boat on a foggy lake. Suddenly, another boat strikes his, disturbing his peace. Anger instantly flares up within him as he prepares to shout at the careless boatman. But when he opens his eyes, he sees that the other boat is empty, drifting with the current. His anger vanishes immediately. The collision was the same, but the story he told himself about it changed. He realized that the external world has no power to upset him without his own reaction. Our minds, however, are not naturally wired for this kind of peace. Evolution designed the human mind for survival, not for happiness. It is an excellent tool for scanning for threats, analyzing dangers, and predicting problems based on the past. While this fight-or-flight mechanism keeps us safe physically, applying it to our emotional lives creates anxiety and fear. To find true freedom, we must make a crucial distinction between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts are the raw energy that pops into your mind effortlessly, often bringing creative ideas or intuitive nudges. These are neutral or positive and require no effort. Thinking, on the other hand, is the heavy lifting. It is the active, effortful grinding on those thoughts, the worrying, judging, and analyzing. It is this active thinking that is the root cause of psychological suffering. Your feelings act as an internal radar system. Negative emotions like stress or frustration are simply indicators that you are engaging in too much thinking, moving you away from your natural state. When you stop the heavy churning of the mind, your innate well-being naturally surfaces, just as a cork floats to the top of the water when you stop holding it down. This natural buoyancy is possible because of the fundamental mechanics of the human experience. To understand why our well-being surfaces automatically, we can look to three core principles that shape our reality: universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought. Think of universal mind as the intelligence and life force behind everything, the electricity that powers the system. Universal consciousness is the awareness that allows us to experience life, the screen on which reality plays. And universal thought is the raw material, like a DVD that provides the information. Without the electricity of mind and the player of consciousness, the DVD of thought would just be inert plastic, but when they work together, they create the movie of your life. The trouble begins when we try to manually rewrite the script in real time. We mistakenly believe that to fix our problems, we must think our way out of them. But fighting your own thinking is like struggling in quicksand. The more you thrash about, the deeper you sink. A better analogy is a bowl of muddy water. If you want the water to clear, you don't stir it or try to scoop out the dirt. You simply leave it alone. Given a little time, the mud settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear on its own. Your mind works the exact same way. When you stop churning the waters with worry and analysis, clarity returns effortlessly. This state of clarity is what athletes call the zone, and what Japanese culture refers to as mushin, or no mind. In this state, there is no hesitation, no fear, and no ego, only instinctive fluid action. It is proof that we perform best, not when we are thinking hard, but when we are not thinking at all. But this raises a practical question. If we stop thinking, how do we pursue goals? How do we build a career or a life? The answer lies in the source of your motivation. Goals generally spring from one of two places: desperation or inspiration. Goals born of desperation feel heavy. They are driven by scarcity, fear, and a sense of, I have to. You might chase a promotion or a specific number in your bank account because you believe achieving it will finally make you feel secure or enough. These are means goals. You are doing them only to get somewhere else. The journey feels like a burden, and the satisfaction of arrival is fleeting, quickly replaced by a new void. In contrast, goals born of inspiration feel light and expansive. They come from a place of abundance, a feeling of, I want to. This is often called divine inspiration, because it feels as though the idea is flowing through you rather than being manufactured by you. When you act from inspiration, you aren't trying to extract happiness from the outcome. You are expressing the happiness that is already inside you. The work itself is the reward. To tell the difference, ask yourself a revealing question. If I had infinite money, no fear, and received zero recognition for my work, what would I create? The answer to that question comes from inspiration. It bypasses the ego's need for validation and survival, pointing directly to your true desires. This leads us to the highest form of this energy, unconditional love and creation. We often place conditions on our love. We love someone because they are funny, or kind, or successful. But if the love depends on a reason, it is fragile. If the reason disappears, so does the love. True, unconditional love has no because. It is simply an outpouring of nature, independent of the other person's actions. The same applies to your work. Unconditional creation is the act of making something purely for the joy of bringing it into existence, without needing it to make you rich, famous, or secure. When you create from this space, you are no longer using your life as a means to an end. You are living in the flow, connected to that infinite source of well-being, and paradoxically, this is often when you produce your greatest work. Once you touch this space of unconditional creation, you might expect to remain in a state of permanent bliss. Yet, paradoxically, as you deepen your practice of non-thinking, you may experience a sudden flare-up of anxiety or doubt. Do not be alarmed. This is often described as the death of the personal ego. Your analytical mind, accustomed to being the frantic captain of your ship, realizes it is losing control. It tries to pull you back into the noise with waves of fear. The key is to recognize that these negative feelings are merely the debris of old thinking patterns, not the truth of your reality. Consider the immense amount of energy you used to spend on worry and mental chatter. When you stop overthinking, that energy is suddenly liberated. If you do not give it a direction, it may revert to old habits. You must channel this newfound power into goals of inspiration rather than desperation. This is where a daily activation ritual becomes vital, not as a chore, but as a way to focus your momentum toward joy and service. As your mind clears, your perspective on the world shifts. You begin to see that nothing is inherently good or bad. It is only your thinking that assigns these labels. Imagine a piano. Is there such a thing as a wrong key? No. A key may create dissonance in a specific song, but the note itself is not bad. Similarly, the events and decisions in your life are not inherently wrong. When you stop labeling them, you step out of duality and into a space of acceptance. This relieves the paralyzing pressure of decision-making. You realize that you cannot make a wrong decision, because the path is not a straight line, but a journey of discovery. This understanding allows you to abandon the exhausting pro and con lists and rely on your intuition, your inner GPS. Society often demands logical proof before action, but intuition works differently. It is a knowingness that arrives before the logic. When you seek external validation for your gut feelings, you often find conflict, because others cannot hear your inner guidance. Trusting this wisdom requires a leap of faith. You must define what you want, but you must surrender the how. When you obsess over how your dreams will manifest, you limit the infinite possibilities available to you. You are trying to force a miracle through the narrow aperture of your limited logic. To receive the answers you seek, you must create space for them. There is a Zen story of a scholar who visited a master, his cup full of his own opinions. The master kept pouring tea until it overflowed, demonstrating that you cannot receive new wisdom if you are already full of old thoughts. You must empty your cup. History's greatest minds understood this. Thomas Edison would nap to let solutions surface. Albert Einstein would play the violin when stuck, knowing that problems cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created them. They stepped back into non-thinking to let the divine download occur. This is your task: to clear the noise, trust the unknown, and let the universe handle the details. To actually live this way, you need a reliable process for receiving these divine downloads. It begins with a fundamental recognition. Thinking is the root cause of all negative emotions. This might sound radical, but consider that your perception of reality is shaped entirely by your thinking, not by reality itself. When you realize this, you can move to the second step, which is creating space. You surrender the manual effort of trying to figure everything out, letting go of the how and the when, and instead trust your inner wisdom. Finally, as you surrender, you magnify the feelings of love, peace, and joy that naturally bubble up to fill the void left by your anxiety. To master this, you must understand the critical distinction between thinking and thoughts. While the words are often used interchangeably, they represent opposite forces. Thinking is a verb. It is a manual, strenuous effort that often stems from a biological survival response. It limits you to your past experiences, cuts you off from your source, and gives birth to the ego. Thinking is what makes you suffer. Thoughts, on the other hand, are nouns. They are the divine downloads, the sudden insights and creative flashes that do not originate from your finite mind, but from the universe itself. Your natural state is one of clarity, connection, and well-being. You are not broken, you are simply obscured by the fog of manual thinking. When you stop the verb of thinking, you receive the noun of thoughts. As you practice living in this state of non-thinking, you may encounter resistance. Your brain, always seeking safety, might try to trick you into believing that feeling too peaceful is dangerous. It may whisper that if you aren't worrying, you are losing your edge. This is a mirage. True productivity and abundance thrive in a state of flow, not force. If you find yourself slipping back into manual calculation, treat yourself with compassion. Simply noticing that you have reverted to thinking is enough to break the cycle and return to peace. To sustain this state, you must design an environment that supports it. You cannot expect to maintain a clear mind if your external world is cluttered with triggers. Start by auditing your life. Identify the specific things that spark anxiety or overthinking, whether they are certain foods, a messy physical workspace, or digital noise like constant notifications. Categorize these triggers and rank them by how much they disrupt your peace. Then, create an action plan to systematically remove the worst offenders. Simultaneously, you should build a non-thinking environment. Identify the activities that reliably bring you back to center, such as meditation, exercise, or listening to specific music. Just as you remove the negatives, you must aggressively schedule these positives. A powerful way to anchor this is through a morning ritual. By starting your day with spiritual practice rather than checking your phone, you align with your highest self before the world demands your attention. This creates a momentum of peace that makes it much harder to relapse into stress as the day progresses. You can apply this same rigor to your professional life. Audit your work tasks, rating them on a scale of 1 to 10 based on whether they drain you or inspire you. Your goal is to gradually eliminate the draining tasks and optimize your schedule so that eventually 80% of your time is spent on activities that light you up. By clearing the debris from your environment and your calendar, you stop forcing miracles through a narrow aperture and instead open the floodgates for them to arrive.
I hope you enjoyed this summary of the book. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. And if the summary caught your interest, you can find a link in the description to buy the full book and dive deeper into its ideas. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Did you like this format? What would you change or improve for future summaries? See you in the next video.